It's long-term reform, which is why we need a progressive government for a long time. You're not going to get it on day one. You're not going to get it all in the first term. I see life as a permanent scrummage. You're either on the side that's pushing in favour of working people and progressive politics, or you're pushing the other way for the forces of reaction. Mick Lynch, Royal Ballet, Chorus.
Thank you. What did you make of Angela's speech?
Well, it was good. I mean, it's the stuff we've heard before. To be fair, Keir Starmer came here last year and made a similar speech, listing out what's in the New Deal and the commitment to get it done in the first 100 days. That's all good. But the follow-up, I suppose, is its implementation. So we've got a long road to go, probably at least 12 months. You've got to go through the rough and tumble of politics in that time. You've got to get a manifesto written. You might have reshuffles, all that sort of stuff. And then you've got to get it through Parliament. And then it's what it looks like when it's implemented off the statute book and into the workplace in the case of this stuff. And there's other stuff that we like. The transport policy is good. That's remained on the books. So all that stuff is about delivery and what it's like when we actually get to use it and embolden and enhance workers' rights. And if it comes through the way it is, for me, that's a good first step. For instance, the anti-trade union laws are not being repealed. It's repealed back to 2016, but the Tebbit laws and all the laws that the Tories put in the 80s and 90s are not being repealed. So for us, that first 100-day commitment is good, but I think it's a first instalment as far as we're concerned, and we'll look for further enhancements through the life of what we hopefully will be a long Labour government.
If there was a cast-iron commitment, I mean, if they don't deliver it in the first 100 days, how will the unions react?
Well, I think there'll be a massive fallout. I mean, it's been said multiple times. It was said last night at the General Council dinner. It's been said every time they've been on the record. To be fair, they can't back down on that. I mean, they'll have to put it on the statute book. They've not moved the team that have been piloting it. Angela herself and Justin Madders, people that know a lot, and Justin is doing all the technical stuff behind the scenes. And we're really glad that he's still got the portfolio. So that is a commitment. You can't run away from that.
They're strengthening the rights of workers. I mean, so the ban on 0 hours contracts, ban on fire and rehire. Where does that fit in with what you were talking about yesterday, about bringing all workers onto the books and in-house?
Yeah, they've also said in previous iterations, to be fair, there are lots and lots of sub-promises in that. Those are the headlines. But they've also made a promise, Keir Starmer said it himself, the biggest wave of insourcing in history. And we believe that outsourcing has been a real detriment to working people in many communities. We think it institutionalised racism and also is detrimental to the interests of many women in our society because they tend to be in these low-paid jobs in cleaning, catering, ancillary work as it used to be called. So those people really need that lift up, and that is levelling up. And one of the ways you can solve these problems is to bring the people in-house. So in our industry, if people working directly for Network Rail or the train operating companies, they would get all the enhancements, the contractual rights, the railway pension scheme, sick pay, just as right. You wouldn't even have to negotiate them. So insourcing and the end of that type of work would be a real step forward. And that means that the companies of this world, people like Serco, Mighty, ISS, wouldn't have a role. They'd be working directly for the clients, even Liverpool City Council, all over the country. There are Labour politicians, Labour regimes, if you like, in county halls and city halls that could have a direct effect on that. Of course, it's got to be funded. And we've seen the problems in Birmingham City Council with the equal pay issues, where that commitment has got to attract funding to go with it. So these changes could be really generational if they live up to it and bring them in. What we don't like is that they're confining sectoral bargaining, for instance, which may sound a bit technical. But we used to have sectoral bargaining all over the economy. Even people like agricultural workers, as I said the other night, used to benefit from that sectoral bargaining. It's very difficult to organise an individual farmer because they may only have casual, seasonal work. But if you've got a negotiated rate of pay across the sector, negotiated conditions, and you still can have transient workers in construction, that's the same. But they take those benefits, terms and conditions from one location to another, one project to another. Those will really be fundamental to changing what people get from their work.
The only thing is a lot of these measures sound quite anti-business, I suppose. It's not good for the employer. I mean, when you were at dinner with Keir Starmer last night, did he mention how he was going to keep business and workers happy?
I imagine business will be lobbying, and that's one of the things, the 12 months between now and delivery point, whenever that is, they'll be pressing really hard for them not to be too radical. They'll know it'd be a manifesto commitment, and the dilution, if it happens, will occur in the detail. So there are some really big interests. We've heard from prison officers in there today who are probably working for a private sector prison company. Now that means they've lost out on the benefits of working direct for the Home Secretary, if you like. So that's where it all counts. If you go to an airport, go to a railway station, most people at those areas are not working for the airport authority. They're often not working for the airline. They're not working for the client that you would expect. Sometimes they're badged and uniformed in that way, but they're on substandard contracts. So business used to do all this. They used to employ all their own staff. They used to run welfare clubs, and they used to run all sorts of activities, including defined benefit or final salary pensions for people on the shop floor. They've all been stripped out. But if we want an equal society, a more equal society and a levelled up society, we've got to go back to that basis that employers have a duty to their employees and therefore a duty to their community. Like you used to have at Cadbury's in Birmingham. If you go to Bourneville, they built all the houses. The railways built loads of houses, thousands and thousands of railway estates, which are really good quality homes. That was going on in the 1920s and 30s. Business could do that, and they've got to decide what is profit based on. Is it based on pure dividend and escalating share prices, or is there a social dividend of giving back to the community? And they've got to be controlled. That comes through proper democratic regulation. You can use your profits just to pay off your shareholders, or you can use your profits for the benefit of the entire community. That means a new society, and Labour can do that if they continually reform and regulate on a progressive basis.
If you look at the donations that are being made to the Labour Party now, I mean, Labour are now getting more in than the Conservative Party, and that's coming from people like Lord Sainsbury. I mean, you know, how do you think that Starmer, I can't possibly see a way that you can entertain business who'd like to keep Labour cheap and workers who'd like to have a few rights?
Well, that is the class struggle. That's the definition of it, is that the interest of the owner, the owning class, is in opposition to the people that are making the wealth on their behalf. And what social democracy does, which Labour's a part of, is try and regulate that. It's not a revolutionary style of politics, it's trying to regulate it. And it's been successful. It was successful in this country until Thatcherism came along, but it's been successful in Northern Europe and other economies. And that's why those economies are faring better during these problems than we are. That's why the people are healthier, the people are taller, they're happier by all sorts of measures, because even when they get a little swing to the right, it's not as radical as it's been in this country. They haven't had the full effects of neoliberalism and globalisation the way we have. But I'm not saying things are perfect in those countries, but they're more around a consensus that was established pre-Second World War and certainly entrenched after the Second World War and right through the period since. So we need a bit of that. That's what I'm interested in. It's long-term reform, which is why we need a progressive government for a long time. You're not going to get it on day one. You're not going to get it all in the first term. And there will be, prevailing winds that prevent them doing everything they want. But that's part of the struggle. I see life as a permanent scrummage. You're either on the side that's pushing in favour of working people and progressive politics, or you're pushing the other way for the forces of reaction.
Just on the minimum service, yeah, it was very good, Mick. Just on the minimum service level bill, I mean, you're going to probably be the first union that's going to come up against this legislation. What sort of thing, what policies have you put in place or practices to stop the onus being put onto your workers?
Well, we've got to start with a stance of defiance. We're not going to passively accept our own suppression, as I said on the rostrum. So the problem is we don't know what we have to do to comply. If we were willing to comply meekly, we don't even know what that means. So we don't know what non-compliance means either. Now that may sound like a politician's answer, but we need to see the regulations. We need to get legal advice. We need to sit down with the other unions to work out what we can do. We need to know the effect on our individual members, because it will come very heavily on top of them. It's all right, me as a national officer and a general secretary saying that I think we should do this and the other. We've got to work with our people about what we can do. We might have to have novel forms of industrial action and see what that means. We've never been issued with a work notice. They don't exist. So somebody's going to have to go and draft a work notice, decide what the minimum service on a railway or a fire station or whatever it is will be, and then we'll have to see what we can do about not complying and not cooperating with that, and we'll have to take legal advice. It's as simple as that. They're not going to put me in prison, I hope, but they could shut us down financially, and that may sound trivial, but it's a very serious position. If the union can't exist, we can't organise our people, and we can't pursue the campaigns. So we're looking at an attitude, and our attitude at the minute has been put through this Congress of the whole Labour movement, is that of non-compliance and non-cooperation. What the detail of that means, I can't say from here because we just don't know at this time.
Are you going to prison?
Well, I'll probably fit in there, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it will happen. I mean, they're not going to. That's what they did in the 70s under the Industrial Relations Act. That's what caused it to fail. So they're just going to go for financial punishment and shut the union down. I won't be able to pay my staff. I won't be able to pay benefits to members. But we won't be able to ballot. We won't be able to send emails. That's what they'll do to us. That's sequestration and fines at multiple levels. But the other thing is, individual members can be dismissed for going on strike in a lawful ballot, which is a real change. So they'll breach their contracts of employment and put them out of work, and that is really serious for our members who've been so loyal in these disputes, and we've got to think really carefully about that before we act.